If you're out there basing your real estate decisions on a Fraser ranking, that you're probably doing something wrong. I guess a big think group like the Fraser, I guess they don't have the funds to actually do this research. The rankings actually don't take some other very important learning metrics into their calculations and equations. We are going to try to debunk some of the myths around the Fraser report and Fraser rankings and how that applies to your real estate search. Are the rankings valid? Are they accurate? Do they actually give you a good representation of what the schools are like in that neighborhood? You're spending hundreds of thousands or almost $1 million on real estate. Should you rely on these reports to make your real estate decisions? So I came up with a list of 4 things to consider when thinking about the Fraser rankings and how it should or shouldn't apply to your real estate purchase. So the first thing I thought of was it really lacks any comprehensive metrics. So the only real metrics that feed into the Fraser rankings are usually socioeconomic factors and test scores. But when it comes to these two things, they aren't always a great representative of how good a school really is. So when we think of test scores, a school could test bad in math or languages for a whole litany of reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has bad teachers or bad instructors. The rankings actually don't take some other very important learning metrics into their calculations and equations. It doesn't really take any artistic programs or athletic programs or any other programs like that that help enrich students' lives. These are the things that the Fraser report really should be taking into account if they wanted to have a proper ranking of these schools, but they don't, because these things are a little tougher to measure. And I guess a big think group like the Fraser, I guess they don't have the funds to actually do this research. And I say that tongue in cheek because they absolutely do. They likely choose not to take these things into account. But that leads me then to my second thing, which is a potential misrepresentation of the school's actual quality. So while we went into the facts and figures that went into the rankings themselves, sometimes that high-ranking school might have significant weaknesses in areas like student support or inclusivity, or a lower-ranking school might actually be really strong in community support, inclusivity, and may actually align much better with a certain family's needs. And they may also have innovative teaching approaches that might better align with certain students' needs. And then the third point I'd like to bring up is circling back to socioeconomic factors. It's no secret that when we look at the Fraser rankings, they punish a lot of the schools that are in lower income neighborhoods without actually factoring in why some of these schools may not perform so well on tests. And then a lot of higher income neighborhoods are overrepresented in high rankings, and it may not necessarily be representative of the quality of teaching necessarily. It could actually just be a lot of the extra support that some of these students are getting outside of the school. So you could buy real estate in a neighborhood thinking, wow, the ranking of this school is excellent, so my kids are going to get a great education. Have your kids go to the school and then realize that 80% of the school's population are tutored by outside resources, and perhaps quality of the education isn't really that great. It's just the parents who can afford to pay for extra tutoring and extra services outside of the classroom. So the ranking can be a bit of a false flag. But then there's the fourth factor that I think a lot of people should take into account, and they may not necessarily consider when we look at these rankings. And that's just the pressure and stress that it puts on our kids and the students, and also us parents. So if you're in one of these high-ranking neighborhoods, you're not putting extra pressure and stress on your kids to succeed. As I mentioned in the last section, that when we go into these neighborhoods that are high-ranking, we may not understand the dynamics of the neighborhood, and that perhaps there's a lot of parents paying for extra tutoring. So yes, the school and the test rankings may be high, and now you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and now you're having to spend extra money on tutoring and extra support for your kids just to try to make sure that your kids are still keeping up with these rankings. And again, when we think about things like this and we think about how teachers are placed in different schools and different school districts, I know from experience and speaking to people that I know who are teachers and family members who are teachers, the school boards are intelligent and generally they'll place some of their best and brightest in the schools that need the most help. So if you're a parent out there who doesn't have the resources to pay for all the extra tutoring and extra support outside the classroom, it may not necessarily be the best scenario to put your child in one of these schools that may not have the best and the brightest of teachers. Not to say that there's a hierarchy of teachers, but there's certainly some teachers that are better than others, and especially some teachers are better at supporting kids that need more support. And the school boards will put those teachers in the areas that need more support more often than not. And then not only that, when we look at some of the critiques of the Fraser rankings, and there are a lot out there. If you're watching this video, just do a quick Google of the Fraser report, and it's people on all ends of the political spectrum who kind of call out this report as being a little bit bogus. I know in my own personal experience, I've had my kids in schools that had both extremely high Fraser rankings and kind of mediocre Fraser rankings. And I'll tell you from my own anecdotal experience that my kids actually had a much, or not only had and are having a much better experience in some of these schools that may not rank that high, but they have artistic and, my kids are athletes, they have great athletic programs. And they've actually found that the teachers in some of these schools, especially my youngest right now, he is an excellent teacher who's a bit more of a old school teacher when we think of like a disciplinarian and giving homework and being a little tougher on the kids. And it's actually made kids it's made my son, and I'm sure made a lot of the kids in class, a bit more resilient as humans. And I think from my own personal opinion, I think we do need to build a few more resilient kids out there who are stronger and have stronger wills and stronger minds, and stronger mentalities. And some of these teachers are in the schools that may not perform as well on the Fraser rankings. So while the Fraser rankings are great as a guide, I'm going to dunk on it a little bit and say that if you're out there basing your real estate decisions on a Fraser ranking, that you're probably doing something wrong. No, I'm not just going to sit here and just complain and dunk on the Fraser report and not give you any insight into what you should be looking for when you're buying real estate and making school a deciding factor. The number one thing you can do, and I'm sure a lot of you do that already, is talk to friends and family and colleagues and people you know about the different schools in different neighborhoods in the city of Toronto. A lot of the times, the best way to find out where the good schools are and what the good school districts are is just to talk to people who send their kids to these schools in these districts. If you can't get the information that you're looking for out of your friends and colleagues and circle of people you know, the second thing you can do, and I suggest this to a lot of my clients, is visit the neighborhood with your kids. Go to the parks, go to the school playgrounds on weekends, not during school hours, or you'll have the police called on you pretty quickly, but go to the neighborhoods, go to these areas where other parents congregate, and just strike up conversations with people who are there and ask them like, hey, we're new to this neighborhood. We're potentially looking to buy a house nearby. What do you think of the schools here? And parents are usually, and most parents who are there are usually open books, and they'll give you all of the dirt, the gossip, the good, the bad, the ugly on the neighborhoods or on the schools in that neighborhood. That's a great way of finding out, does the school align with your visions of what your kid's education looks like in that neighborhood? Then lastly, if you are just looking for rankings, instead of looking at the Fraser rankings, just look at the Ontario website of EQAO. You can just look at the raw data directly and start clicking through the list of the different schools and finding the simple raw test scores without the lens of the Fraser report and adding their socioeconomic data to that and having a ranking. Look at the test scores directly and then come up with your own decision. It's the hot button topic of rankings and school rankings. Let me know your thoughts on my thought process. Do you like the Fraser rankings? Is it something that you think shouldn't be talked about anymore when it comes to school rankings? Are test scores a thing? if you have kids, your personal experience with schools and school rankings, if you purchase real estate based on a school ranking, how it worked out for you. I'd love to hear all of that. Throw them down in the comments. As always, I invite you all to like, subscribe, and I'd love to build a community of more people under the real estate, especially young families looking to stay in the city. And as I like to say always, as a sign off on all of my videos, the best things in life are where you least expect them. So stay positive and keep an open mind. Peace out.